So it is my pleasure to introduce our second speaker today, Bill Fetterolf. He is an Army veteran. He served from 1966 to 1968. He served in Vietnam from 1967 to 1968. Bill was wounded twice. He has received the Purple Heart, one Purple Heart, but I'll let him tell you about that. And one thing that is very interesting is I personally had never heard or knew that you could do this, but Bill was able to make a home video of his time while he was at Vietnam. I know he had a lot more footage than what we have here today, but we do have about an hour and 20-minute video, but we're only going to show a little portion of that today, about 25 minutes of it, because I want to give Bill an opportunity to talk about his experience and then maybe answer some questions if that works out okay. So we're going to start with his, well, I'll let him talk first. Go ahead.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you all for coming today, and I have to say welcome home to all the veterans. It was a rough coming, long time. There's a four-letter word for war. A lot of people use it. It starts with an H, but I'll tell you what, a lot of people don't even understand what a war is. But I hope I can show you some of what I saw in Vietnam and some of what we lived through. So this is the way it's going to hopefully play out, like Tammy said. All right. I guess you want to start the film and we'll go for it from there.
Now, Vietnam had no way of supplying their soldiers with food or anything like that, so they used to have to tax the people, take food out of their foodstuffs in their homes and stuff, in order to eat. And then where we find a big cache of food dumps and stuff for the Viet Cong, well, the South Vietnamese soldiers definitely got that, You see later on where we're taking some pigs out of the tunnels up in the mountains where the Viet Cong is thrown down. Here these women coming with the little chogi sticks, out all kinds of vegetables, going to the market in town. Little kids are going to school. Hopefully that's what we were doing there, the Vietnamese women using the public utilities. There's some bamboo beds going. Never did see any toilet paper over there, except what we had. They never used the stuff. Yep, just pull the baggy pant leg up and go. But that lady had to take her down, because she was doing the other job. Here's one of our blown up Army personnel carriers. This is where we lived up in the mountains there, where we were bulldozing, pulling guard duty for the Seabees while they bulldozed the trees down in the jungle away. It was kind of rainy that day. You can see everybody kind of hunkered around the canvases over top the tracks. There's the Vietnamese just got some rice. We ate off paper plates and plastic silverware over there. The water wasn't any good to use very much. The only water we had come out of iodization plants, and that was only used for drinking and bathing in their category. There's somebody popped a yellow helicopter, or yellow smoke grenade for bringing a helicopter in. The helicopter's bringing in a road grader for the Seabees to use. That's called a flying crane. Like 4 men in that compartment there on the right-hand side of that helicopter. You see a bus back in the background behind it. It's looking over the refugee camp at Tam Key. We had a couple thousand Vietnamese that we relocated out of the jungles there at that refugee camp. There goes that same road grader that they were carrying under that helicopter. It's an old style helicopter the military used to use, and the American Army give them, the South Vietnamese Army, all them style helicopters. Something like they were using in Korean War. Just looking out across a lot of the damaged jungle here in the foreground. There's some mountains to the west of where we were in Tam-Key, off of July. Yeah, I'm going south to west here, panoramic view. This particular spot in Vietnam here from the coast to the Cambodian border was only 23 miles wide. And down the widest part, when we get down the Mekong Delta, it's 110 miles wide, the widest part of South Vietnam. About 800 miles long. There's some Vietnamese girls there were filling sandbags for us. This is looking back at a base camp down in July. We got a chance to go to the stores down there one day, and then we were on our way back to our base. The South Vietnamese woman there we were using for secretary in one of the buildings. You know, interpret language and stuff so we get the people to come fill the sandbags, you know, and they can make money through the government. Average income at that time in South Vietnam was like $300 a year. Yep. Most people only had like 2 pairs of clothes, 2 sets of clothing. Wear one day, wash the other one that day, and next day swap clothes again. And you see in the foreground here, the light green, that's rice seedling plants. Those all had to be picked and bundled, put in bundles, and then they take them out and they plant them into rice paddies. And after they plant them in rice paddies, they have to be totally covered with water all the time, or have the roots at least underwater. So the rice paddies were all anywhere between 6 to 10 inches deep all the time with water until they get ready to harvest a crop, and then they would drain them. And all they were just to make the creeks just dammed up in the valleys, you know, so they had the water dammed up. You see, you know, what am I looking at here? Yeah, okay, just back in the mountains again. Zoom in on them. Let's look at an old church. Here's one of our 52-ton tanks are stuck. Pretty soupy, some of them valleys. Yeah, well, right in the front where that guy was standing, the front end of that tank is usually about 4 feet high off the ground. It was pretty deep. So we had to pop a smoke grenade because the M188 tank retriever couldn't find us. Here they come in a machine that weighs 75 tons, has a 1,000 horsepower, 12-cylinder engine in it. And if we would run through the cornfields around this part of the country, like if we're running through the rice right there, we would shoot at the farmers would shoot at us too, you know. But they were compensated for all the damage that we did at different times there. Here's one of our armored personnel carriers. They had a 360 horse V8 diesel engine in it, 4-speed automatic transmission. They weigh about 11 ton each. Scout vehicles. Here we are coming. We was on a road duty. I was coming on July, I think. Yeah, this is in what the hell was this? Can't remember the name of the town there. Basically had knickknacks and laundry service and girls of the night in that town. Pretty bashful. At the time I was taking these, I didn't know what the word movie camera was. Now this young girl here was posing like I have a regular steel camera for me, but I didn't tell her it was a family. You know, of course they wouldn't know what a movie camera was anyway because they'd never seen them, you know, so they had no idea. So many people had heard of radios at one time or another, but there were no televisions, no running water. Everything had to be dipped out of a well. Little hamlet here, this guy pretty rich farmer. There's the front door leaning there sideways to that house, that hut. There's some banana trees. Plants, actually, banana plants. There's my friend John Minks with his new McCullough chainsaw there. He's going right at it. There's a water tub. When people get water out of the well, that was like the central dish something. Sometimes the water wells were maybe 50 yards away from them, or 100 yards. So they had to carry buckets of water back, and they would dump the water in that thing. This was a Viet Cong meeting place where we had to burn the hut down. Wasn't anybody's particular house at that time. So it was suspected Viet Cong. We burn it. This is a blood tree. Got a reason to call it a blood tree because the sap looks like blood in it, red colored. You see on the end of my finger there? Now I'm giving a Whisk Broom commercial. It's a little handmade out of grass, reeds. This is a bamboo viper going up the tree there. Green snake, grows about 6-8 feet long. Very deadly. We used to call them Charlie Two Steps. Call they bite you, and you take 2 steps, you're dead. So over here. This we're going back on a daily mission away from our basic camp. This picture here is like, I think it's the January '68, somewhere near there, when the Marines all moved from all the points south of us through north to the DMZ, get ready for the Tet Offensive. So they moved all the Marines. This is that tank retriever with the boom up on it. And another guy using the public utilities. Now we're out on a mission. We got a helicopter coming in. They can't find us in the jungle. So you pop smoke grenade. And we had various colors that we could use. All set up there. Medevac. They weren't allowed to have any guns on them. You know, that's what and it was kind of a thing, you know, the Vietnamese wouldn't shoot at them. You know, the Viet Cong wouldn't shoot at them helicopters because it's on the Red Cross. I can't remember if we had somebody wounded at that time or what. There's a hibiscus plants, grow very nice in warm weather over there. Numerous colors, either blue, purple, yellow, white, and red. I sent that back for my mother's serenity so she would be quiet. There's some South Vietnamese soldiers. They got an M1 carbine. We had thousands of them that they'd captured and stuff. They give them to the South Vietnamese, and this was the first South Vietnamese Ranger Squad battalion we were working with at the time. The ladies got mats there drying out tea leaves. You see the mats are bamboo woven. Under her feet is a patio. The only place any kind of paving around her houses was outside at the patio. So now she's flipping potatoes to dry the potatoes so they could dehydrate them and use them later without them spoiling and rotting. Here's one of their water buffaloes. They're beast of burden over there. They use them for pulling the drags in the rice paddies. You'll see some of that a little bit later on. Everybody thought it was so sweet that I was so brave that that little girl thought I was going to take the water buffalo and eat it. She brought it out for me. My mom said, well, it was really nice. It was really calm. I said, well, it wasn't that calm. I said, we had about 3 machine guns trained on it, so it wouldn't attack me. Excuse me. Something you don't normally see in bright-colored T-shirts on Vietnamese people. I see the South Vietnamese soldiers, they eat their bowl of rice, and they would have like one bowl of rice and all your little juices and stuff around it and your meat, and you would pick your rice out of your little bowl, and then you pick a piece of meat out of the neutral bowl, your plate, tray. More fertilizer for the rice paddy. Health problems. Doing a panoramic view down the coastal plain. Coastal plain there where we were at around Tamkee, July was only about 1.5 miles, 2 miles wide. Need to go back up into the mountains. Here comes a young girl. There's a little set of railroad tracks right there. That was during the French, when the French occupied South Vietnam. See the young lady with her hand coming on, walking along, going through the creek right there. And she reaches down and pulls her pant legs up because she don't get her pant legs wet. But she had bare feet, you know. Didn't worry about the feet. I look at where we had our track vehicles coming through somebody's rice paddy. We've got another tank stuck there. We're going to have to blast away some of the bank here. You see it blasting away so we can get the tanks up over the bank. our tank drivers didn't like it in Vietnam at all. Those babies sank like boat anchors, I mean to tell you. We spent more time pulling them out of the race paddies than you could imagine. That square box up by the main tube on the tank there is a 1 million candle power spotlight. It's lined up with the main gun tube, and you could turn it on and narrow the beam down about a half mile, 3/4 mile away to about 3 foot of width. And if you see any suspected Viet Cong in the nighttime when you had the light on, pull the ripcord, let them have it. We had about 7 different kinds of shells for the tanks to shoot. High explosive, white phosphorus, canister rounds, which had a lot of metal shrouds in them, like a short pointed shotgun, shrouds, needles. Okay, the first bathtub I saw in South Vietnam, and the closest running water was 30 miles away. That little hamlet. They must have had fun lugging that thing out there that far, to get a bathtub out there in the countryside. Oh, this is where I'm leading the water buffalo around, yeah. Actually, he got away from me. He took off running, but we went back to that village about a day and a half later. They caught back up with him and got him back at his corral, his pen. He wasn't sure he liked me. Just looking over another hamlet. Some of the roofs on those hooches there were probably 3 foot thick of thatched grass. They just never take them off and put new on there. They just keep putting new on top of the old stuff, and so to keep the rain and typhoons and all that out of there, keep themselves dry inside. Where they were probably about 3 foot thick. Single blades of grass, each one placed by hand. Or reeds, they're like a cattail grass around here. Okay, here you see where we were up in the mountains a little farther, where the South Vietnamese were getting the pigs, where the Viet Cong had them down in the tunnels, and they'd capture and use them for food. They'd steal them from the people in the towns and the villages and out in the countryside. And we got about a half a dozen pigs out of that one tunnel there. Some of those tunnels would go for miles through the mountains, about 6 to 10 feet underground, about 3 feet wide and 4.5, 5 feet tall, about the depth of your tallest Viet Cong or Vietnamese. They're very short people. This is why I wished I would have had a sounder. There was a lot of squealing going on. I was carrying them pigs around. Yeah. Here we are back on a place called Hill 10, one of our major base camps for us. And now we're looking out over the coastal plain. We're probably about 2 miles from the ocean here, or 3. Yeah, we're going back, looking south to the west. Okay, we're out still looking west back into the mountains. Now we're down on the coastal plain. We're doing a road survey. There's one of the major highways right there listed on the map. It's about bicycle width wide, and this guy got bamboo trees he's going to market with to sell, or take them home and make some beds out of chairs or something out of them. The guy's coming back from a slight searching mission. this time when I was in South Vietnam there, we had to wear helmets and flak jackets all the time, you know, for protection. Later on, and they give us the jungle helmets, they give us the jungle hats to wear, you know, later on. But when we first got there, we had to wear the steel pots. About 10 pounds of weight on your head all day. And at night.
Were the jungle hats cloth?
Yeah, yeah, they look like a Baden Powell hat. Yeah. This is back out on that peninsula I was telling you about with the white sands. That was miserable stuff. You could hardly see. You had to have sunglasses. It just light reflected off it so much. No, we had found some landmines. This is where I got the films back around there. We found some landmines. Any army stuff we got, we had to explode it right on the scene. So we just set it off, detonated it with some C4 explosive. This is the South Vietnamese Army camp right there, with the bamboo poles pointed out, spears, keep from massive invasions. I'm driving and taking pictures at the same time here, so it's a little, that's why it gets a little bumpy in that category. There's one of the little scooter they had. Everybody ran out of candy bars and food for the little kids, so we had to move on. This was looking up on a little higher elevation out towards that peninsula I was telling you was off the coast there. Jutting out from the coast, a small village down here to the right foreground. Look at the panoramic scenery in the background. A lot of pine trees in that portion of that. Okay, this is 28th of January, 1968. This was the first day I got shot. They, Viet Cong, there was about 2,300 of them there at 5:30 in the morning. When we got up, they let us have it. Old barrel. There's a jet coming in, dropping the bombs. You see this guy drop two 250s. Oh, no, missed it. Okay, this is on top of our tracked vehicle about 2 or 3 hours after into the battle. All the shells on the ground, casings for the machine guns. Answered back in the background, the jets had come in and did bombing runs, and we fired some white phosphorus rounds out of our tanks out there in that area. We were at a lull because we were waiting for the jets to come in and do the bombing and tenderize the Viet Cong a little bit. And here comes a couple bombs. You see another jet coming a little bit. They're traveling at about 700 miles an hour. I tried to slow my slow motion down on my camera so you can see them jets go past, but they're flying in at about 700 miles an hour at us. Yeah, and you see two 250s there. You see the concussion come off of that bomb? When I usually do my movies, I usually run backwards, run it 2 or 3 times for people to see that concussion off that. You imagine, see, when they drop that 250-pound bomb, there's 200 pounds of explosive in there. Anybody that's ever shot a gun, you only got a couple ounces of gunpowder, let alone 250 pounds. So, and here's where some of my shrapnel wound is, my stomach. That was a couple of 3 days after I got back to my base camp, get my movie camera. Yeah, I spent 3 days on a hospital ship. Then it was 3 or 4 days at base camp until they get me transported back to my platoon, which was stationed about 5 miles south of this particular hill here.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Comments?
Do you want to tell them about your second wound.
Okay, those are pictures there from northern part of South Vietnam. We're just south of Da Nang in Chu Lai, about 34, 35 miles south of Da Nang. I was in an Army cavalry outfit at that time. I spent 8 months with them. I was a track driver, one of the 113A1s, a little square box thing. It went on. There was scabs from my bullet wounds and my shrapnel I got hit with in the stomach. I got shot that day. That was the 31st of January, 1968, during the Tet Offensive. You were seeing pictures there of that bombing. We got 40 of us got attacked by about 2,200 North Vietnamese regular soldiers. We had a couple guys killed. That goes along with war. And I got dusted off, was out of my outfit for about a week. By the time I got back, I could take some more pictures and continue on. And later on, I got transferred down south to the Mekong Delta, about 500 miles away. And I went from the mountainous area of South Vietnam to the flatlands of the Mekong Delta. Nothing there is about 5 feet above sea level unless you pile of dirt higher than that. I spent 4 months there. After I got wounded the second time was May 7th, 1968. We were on guard duty for security duty outside of the base camp of the Thompson Nut Air Force Base in Saigon. And we got attacked with about 7 days of combat. That's why I got wounded the second time. And they hadn't gotten me my Purple Heart yet from the first time, and it didn't matter. I just took a bullet across the forehead here. Didn't leave any scar. But my radio operator, what was right beside me, got shot in the shoulder, and he went to Japan for a couple months. And he come back, and he was messed up in the head. Of course, a lot of our Vietnam veterans came back that way. They weren't right. They carried the war with them, and a lot of people don't talk about the war. But I use my films as my therapy. We talk about the war. And it's been nice because I've been to churches and I've been to schools, Lions clubs, fire halls, groups of people, picnics, family picnics. It's been a pleasure. People see them. It is sorry, it's a rough day today that we all have to be here to honor our people that didn't make it. But we have to be proud. We're the greatest country in the world.
Excuse me, sir.
Any other questions?
I would just like to say we also want to honor those who came back.
Beg pardon?
She said we also want to honor those that came back, not
Oh,
just
yes,
the ones that
yes.
didn't.
Just welcome home, everybody. Yeah. So, anyway,
Does anyone have?
Tammy wanted me to tell you about that second time I got wounded. I got transferred down to Mekong Delta, the 9th Infantry Division. There was only 3 guys in the whole outfit that had any more time in the Vietnam than I did. One guy was a clerk, he had 3 weeks. Another guy was a cook, he had about 3 months. Another guy had about 3.5 months there. So I was the granddaddy of the combat, because I'd been 8 months in Vietnam. So all the new recruits we had was at Tan Son Nhut that day. It was probably after about 3 months, probably about a month after they got there. They had their first 2 weeks in Vietnam. All they had to do was sit around and enjoy the good weather. They got acclimated to it. When I landed in July 1967, 3 days, I started getting shot at, first time in my life. Scared the living daylights out of you. So then, but in the meantime, I didn't turn my wound in the second time because my men needed me. I had all new recruits. I didn't want to leave them. They told me I should get dusted off, flown to a hospital, field hospital somewhere. I said, no way. I stayed there. I saved their lives. We got in it pretty thick a few months after that. You know. And I'm glad I got home. When I left Cleveland Airport to fly back to Dallas, Texas, where we trained at Fort Hood for 10 months, my mom said, goodbye, son. I told my mother, I'll be back. I promise I felt good keeping. So, anybody else? Any questions? I see some Vietnam veterans here. You guys, I have anything wrong about what I said? The only thing I could say is, I did one thing. I did said them jets coming in, taking the bomb and run. We're doing about 700 miles an hour. 52 years after Vietnam, just a couple years ago, I got a chance to meet the pilot of that jet. There was more to that film. And he had a chance to slow the pictures down and he could read the serial number on the tail of his jet. He stood up, shook my hand. It was an honor. Better than any medal. And I told him thank you for the service that he gave us. Because when we blew those 2,200 Viet Cong soldiers, North Vietnamese, there was a lot of dead bodies laying around. And when we scared them away, that's when they caught the jets come in there. And he corrected me. He said it wasn't 700 miles an hour. He said they were down to about 350 to 400 miles per hour flying them jets when they come in to make the bomb and run. Because they had to be able to see to pick out a target. And when you're going 700 miles an hour, when you're only 50, 60 feet off the ground, you can't see. It's all blur. So, you know, it was 330 days of Vietnam. So, okay. And like Tammy said, I have the DVDs. I've been invited to schools, Lions clubs, churches, fire halls. Anybody who wants to see the films, want me to speak, I'll be glad to anytime. I do it free of charge because I believe in our freedom, and I think we had a job to do in Vietnam, and I think we did it well. So, I guess, I don't know, we should have had more film. So, I mean, huh?
I said I can show either more or you can be done. That's
Well, I could talk about, well, like I say, I made a fact is that I'll just talk some more.
You'll talk some more?
And bore everybody. Yeah, we had to eat on paper plates and plastic silverware, and every day was a picnic day, because that's what you do on a picnic. They didn't have enough water facilities to, and then no dishes for KP duty. So that's what we ate on. Most of the time I was on an outpost, out in the jungle, up in the hills, down out. And they would fly our food into us, sometimes a day late. Sometimes we got it, it was cold. But we had to eat it anyway because we were hungry. So a nice place like Vietnam, so you people that were on the ground know that there's a lot of fruits and vegetables to be eaten in that country, as you can get. I shared a few meals with some of the Vietnamese, the soldiers you saw in there. Were South Vietnamese Rangers. They were the first South Vietnamese military. They got AR-15 rifles, or actually M1, M16s that we were using. All the new modern round hand grenades we threw. And all kinds of unique weapons. So, and we shared that with them. You see them taking the pigs out of the tunnels in the mountains. Some of them tunnels were down about 15 feet deep, and they would go miles over through the mountains. They were all put there before the Second World War, as in the Japanese forced the people of Indonesia peninsula at that time to dig down caves and tunnels for protection and to get away from the bombing in the Second World War. And they were down there, but the pigs got down the tunnels as the Viet Cong would come and steal the pigs from the people. They would take their chickens, they would take their food. And so that's where they would hide it in the tunnels, and that's where the pigs were, down the tunnels. Well, when we had the South Vietnamese soldiers there, they had some tunnel rats, and it fit right in with our tunnel rats, which the guys that were short got into the tunnels. Gentleman here shaking his head, he understands that. And so they went down in his tunnels, and that particular hole there, they picked about half a dozen pigs out of there. It was a squealing mess, and it wasn't long that they were on the spit out there in the jungle because the South Vietnamese army had no way of supplying food to their troops either. So they were taken from the people. It's kind of like a surtax on them situation that they had. They were getting robbed by everybody. Worst part about that is they didn't care who the politicians were. They were poor enough. The average income in South Vietnam was only about $300 a year per person. We were getting $300 a month in the service when I was a private. We had to become, we had to become a corporal or private second class in order to fight in a combat zone. So everybody got promoted when you got off the boat in Vietnam, to whatever rank your next rank up would be. We were getting $300 a month in wages, $100 a month combat pay. So we were mercenary soldiers per se. We were getting paid to go kill people. So, as we see the people over there, they only had 2 sets of clothing, had a black silky material. Most of them, it was this outfit they had on, and they had an outfit on the clothesline, drying out, tree branch somewhere. So they couldn't afford anything other than the food they had. They had to depend on the food, go to the villages, the bigger villages, sell their products. So, just good farming if they could make money. No, basically, most people had 2 sets of clothes, and goes along with that. I never saw a radio, never saw television, or anything electrical other than in the bigger villages, bigger towns, where they had 1 single light bulb in a house and a couple wires to it. When we were just outside of Tam Key, was a province capital. Well, they had electricity and running water. Running water was nothing more than a galvanized pipe running up the street. They had a T on a joint, run a line up, put a spigot there, and it fed about 4 or 5, 10 families up and down the street. The next fire hydrant down or spigot up fed another 8 or 10 houses in that category. No toilets. You see the woman using the public utilities. You saw a lot of that over there. Sometimes they wouldn't even get that far off of Highway 1. They just drop your butt right and hang your butt over the edge of the dikes, and they would go. No toilet paper. Never saw a roll of toilet paper out of our military camps. They didn't need them. All kind of leaves, I guess, or fingers. They told us not to drink the water. Yeah, get your lips wet. If you had a dry shirt, dry your lips off if you get splashed with the rice paddy water. There's about 5,000 diseases in it. About 3,000 they didn't have cures for over here in Vietnam. All of our water we got, we bathed in and drank was desalinized water from the bigger bases that we had along the coastline of South Vietnam. Everything we drank, everything we washed with, had to be brought in by truck or air to us. So. Anyway, I gotta think of what else. I'm thinking of sleeping in the bunkers, sleep with your clothes on every night. Keep your bunk away from the walls, the sandbag walls of the bunkers, because the rats would tunnel into the sandbags. You're laying there in your bed, you had your toes hanging out of your bed, you had your boots off, which we almost had to every night. Take them off so our feet would dry out, we wouldn't get the jungle rot. But if you were close to the wall, the rats would come and want to chew on your feet. Saltiest, stinkiest part of your body at that time. Yeah. I blew a couple away one night. It's awful noisy in a bunker inside. You should. That's not a good thing. Anyway, mosquitoes. Oh, they just love me. Wake up in the morning, go on a night ambush patrol. We had oil fluid we put on us. You know, it was supposed to be insect repellent. I think it was insect enticer. And I had 55 mosquito bites, wrist to the tips of my fingers. They'd love to get you right in the tender spot. That's the highest I ever counted, 55 bites. You'd walk through the rice paddies, walk through the swamps, your green fatigues would turn black with mosquitoes on them. Your arms, face, everything, miserable. And I got a lot of water over there coming down out of the sky. I was talking to a guy a while ago, a Vietnam veteran. He said, yeah, you only have 2 seasons, a dry season and a rainy season. Well, I think it lasted all year, that rainy season. That's, excuse me. We get about 180 inches of annual rainfall in this part of the country. They get 300. It's a lot of water. It's a wonder the people don't have pontoons for feet instead of normal feet. Yeah. I think most places they got about 3 crops of rice off. You saw the film, them light beds, they pre-plant the rice like they do our onions, and some of the plants, they plant them in beds, and then they pick each one blade at a time, pick them up, put them in a bundle, go out there in the water, in the muck, in the rice paddies, one plant at a time to plant the rice. Some of the rice paddies, you could have about 2 rice paddies for the size of this room. You know, it would take them a long time. They would use the water buffaloes, a piece of burden, and have a log behind it with wooden spikes down in it. That's how they fixed the soil. But they do that all in the water. Later on in my films, I have that, pictures of them people, you know, doing that. And other than that, they had bananas and grapefruit, coconuts in the wild, growing over there. It's a papaya, lots of fresh fruits, jungle material, food. And we ate a lot of it. It was great. Yeah. Anybody got any questions?
I'd just like to make an observation.
One more, Maya.
I'd just like to make an observation. At the time of the Vietnam War,
Excuse me a minute.
my younger brother, I was not close with my younger brother. And I didn't get to know very much about how his time in Vietnam. But he's gone now. He died a couple years ago. It's learning more about what it was like when he was there. I really appreciate you talking.
Woman wanted to chat and tell me she lost a family member. And he passed away. She didn't know what our conditions were like over there, and she just thanked me for showing them and telling them how it was, my tour of duty of Vietnam. So, salute you, ma'am. God rest your friend. Nice quiet group. God, I've done high school groups that had just plastered me with questions. I was in a high school one time waiting to get my escort up to the classroom. This is after all the school shootings here, the last few years. And math teacher was there, and he asked me, he said, have you seen all them Vietnam War movies? I said, yeah. I said, I've seen them all, most of them. Everything from Heavy Metal Jacket, everything. We were soldiers, you know it is. And he asked me, he goes, on a scale of 1 to 10, he says, what do you rate those movies as far as accuracy, authenticity? I said, I'll probably rate a lot of them at about a 5 or 6 out of 10. He says, well, he said, what do you rate your movies at? I said, mine are 10 plus. Because there's nobody play acting in my films. Yes. So, yep. I guess that's about it. Nope.